Coming up on a newscast, North Korea revealed it's facing a threatening surge in COVID-19 infections. President Yoon Suk-yeol announces plans to supply vaccines and medical supplies to the regime. President Yoon officially appointed 3 more ministers. He has now filled the top posts in 14 out of 18 ministries. South Korea unveiled a series of updates to its coronavirus prevention measures. Changes to the rules on testing will make it easier for people to travel to the nation. Hope you're wrapping up the week well. I'm Daniel Che here to bring the latest. Let's begin with our top story. Seoul's government plans to offer Pyongyang vaccines and other medical relief. The regime's leader is implementing strict measures to contain the spread, including a full lockdown. Han Sung-woo starts us off.
In line with his fundamental stance on humanitarian aid, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol plans to provide North Korea with COVID-19 vaccines and other medication. That's according to spokesperson Kang In-sun, who said in a written statement on Friday that specifics will be discussed with the Kim Jong-un regime. North Korea, just a day after it officially confirmed its first outbreak of COVID-19, revealed through state media on Friday that it's facing a threatening surge in infections that has resulted in 6 virus-related deaths. It's prompted Kim Jong-un to lock down the whole country and heavily criticize gaps in his regime's antivirus measures during an inspection of the North's National Quarantine Emergency Command Center on Thursday, where he not only called for the isolation of the ill, but also the adoption of scientific methods of treatment and the mobilization of medical supplies. The KCNA reported that Kim was briefed on site regarding over 350,000 North Koreans that have fallen ill from a fever with an unknown cause since late April, of which around 160,000 have fully recovered. Over 18,000 people were reportedly confirmed with the illness across the north on Thursday alone, and among those who have died was one infected with the BA.2 subvariant, also known as stealth Omicron. Earlier on Thursday, Kim had chaired a Workers' Party meeting to discuss the regime's response to the, quote, maximum national emergency, where video footage from Korean Central Television showed him wearing a mask in public for the first time. Radio Free Asia reports the World Health Organization is in touch with the North's health ministry officials and is still committed to offering help on acquiring COVID-19 vaccines through the COVAX Global Vaccine Sharing Program, which the regime has so far declined. Meanwhile, Amnesty International has demanded North Korea immediately set up plans to secure vaccines for its vulnerable population in cooperation with the international community. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
The nation's top diplomat held talks with his American counterpart. The two condemned Pyongyang's continued provocations and agreed to maintain a strong defense posture. On the regime's COVID-19 outbreak, they agreed to continue consultations on ways to provide humanitarian aid. Min Suk-yeol shares with us what was discussed.
South Korea and the U.S. remain steadfast with their goal to completely denuclearize the Korean peninsula despite North Korea's continued provocations. South Korea's Foreign Minister Park Jin spoke with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken Friday morning and condemned North's latest ballistic missile launches. The two agreed to maintain a strong combined defense posture and to strengthen their cooperation against such threats. At the same time, Seoul and Washington shared their willingness to resume talks with Pyongyang. Also, along with the international community, they agreed to continue consultations on humanitarian aid to the north following its first confirmed cases of COVID-19. The talks between the top diplomats come just a day after the national security advisors of South Korea and the U.S. held a phone call shortly after Pyongyang fired 3 short-range ballistic missiles toward the East Sea. Kim Song-han and his U.S. counterpart Jake Sullivan strongly condemned the regime's latest missile launches and agreed to work closely on North Korea. Japan and the European Union also denounced North Korea's recent provocations. In a joint statement, Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and EU leaders called on the North to cease its destabilizing actions and to resume dialogue with relevant parties. Together, they reiterated that North Korea should not have nuclear weapons and urged the regime to abandon weapons of mass destruction. Meanwhile, the U.S. is closely monitoring signs of additional provocations from the North, including a 7th nuclear test, with President Joe Biden set to visit South Korea next week. Yoon Suk-yeol, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol officially appointed 3 more ministers: Unification Minister Gunn, Minister of Culture, Sports and Tourism Park Bo-gyun, and Arirang as Minister of Land, Infrastructure and Transport. The South Korean leader has now filled the top post in 14 out of 18 ministries. Yoon also asked the National Assembly to approve Justice Minister nominee Han Dong-hoon, requesting lawmakers to send him a report on the confirmation hearing by Monday. President Yoon named his new chief nuke envoy. Kim Gunn will begin work as the new special representative for Korean Peninsula Peace and Security Affairs, a vice minister level position. He has an extensive background in diplomacy, having served as deputy foreign minister and as ambassador to the UK. He replaces No Gyo-duk and will coordinate closely with his American counterpart, Sung Kim. The president also announced 20 other vice minister level officials, including Kim Chang-gi to head the National Tax Service and Park Min-sik as Minister of Veterans Affairs. President Yoon led a meeting with experts on the economy. In making policy, he emphasized the importance of listening to those working in their respective sectors and the need to address difficulties faced by ordinary people. Yoon Jung-min brings the highlights from that session.
Since taking office this week, President Yoon Suk-yeol has been emphasizing the need to improve the economy and people's livelihoods. And to do that, he said on Friday, the government needs to hear from people who are working hands-on in various sectors of the economy. He was speaking in a meeting at the Korea Center for International Finance in Seoul.
국민들께서 실제로 피부로 느끼는 경제는 매우 어렵습니다. 문제를 정확히 진단하기 위해서는 우리가 늘 현장에서 답을 찾는 마음가짐이 필요하다고 생각합니다. 경제는 바로 우리 국민의 삶 그리고 현장에 있는 것입니다.
He added that even if a policy seems good, the government must consider in detail its impact on the market and how it'll affect the judgment and thinking of economic actors. The presidential office said it was Yoon's first work-related outing since taking office, adding that it shows his determination to prioritize the economy and improve people's livelihoods. The president also stressed the need for preemptive measures to overcome the current economic situation.
정부는 이럴 때일수록 경제 상황을 정확하게 인식하고 그걸 바탕으로 해서 위기를 선제적으로 대비해 나가야 할 것입니다.
President Yoon brought up a number of concerns such as the impact of the pandemic, global supply chain issues, inflation, rising volatility in the foreign exchange market, the trade deficit, and a slowdown in the real economy. The head of the Korea Center for International Finance stressed the need for close monitoring and a fine-tuned monetary policy.
Prices have been soaring since the end of last year, and that's being strongly reflected in monetary policy. That has resulted in growing concerns about stagflation, a situation where prices are out of control and the economy is slowing down. This is why the financial markets are so volatile right now.
The meeting was attended by Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho and Bank of Korea Governor Lee Chang-yong and other experts. The experts raised concerns about inflation and possible stagflation, as well as growing downside risks due to rate hikes in major economies. As for the financial and foreign exchange markets, they said they expect uncertainty to lead to greater volatility. Also discussed were measures to increase the supply of homes and easing regulations to stabilize the real estate market. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
South Korea continues to see a decline in the daily virus tally, as well as a number of severely ill patients and deaths. The government updated some of the rules on testing to make it easier for people to travel to Korea. Choi Min-jung has the latest.
South Korea has rolled out a series of updates to its COVID-19 prevention measures. Starting May 23rd, inbound travelers to South Korea will be allowed to submit rapid antigen test results to verify that they have not contracted COVID-19. Currently, a PCR test result must be provided before entering the country, and people are required to get tested within 48 hours prior to departure. For rapid antigen tests, the requirement is within 24 hours. However, travelers arriving from countries that do not recognize rapid antigen test results, like Indonesia and Japan, will still need to show results of PCR tests. Authorities are also reducing the number of required tests from the current 3 to 2 starting June 1st. Children aged 12 and under arriving with a fully vaccinated parent or guardian will be exempt from taking COVID tests. Until then, only children aged 6 and under can freely enter the country without getting tested. In line with the increasing demand for overseas travel, the government announced that it will expand the number of international flights by 230 a week in June. This means more than 700 overseas flights will be available per week starting next month. On the treatment front, authorities have secured an additional 1 million courses of oral COVID-19 drugs. They also revealed plans to expand eligible recipients by lowering the age bracket. Currently, only those aged 60 and above and people with underlying health conditions above 40 can receive COVID-19 pills. However, authorities are planning to allow people aged 12 and above with underlying diseases to also receive oral treatment. These efforts come as South Korea continues to see a decline in the number of new infections. The country on Friday reported over 32,400 new cases, down by more than 3,400 from the previous day. The single-day average for this week declined by more than 12% compared to the week before. The number of severely ill patients remained in the 300s for the fourth straight day, and deaths below 100 per day for the past 2 weeks. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Having lifted almost all COVID-19 restrictions, more Koreans are feeling closer to living normal daily lives. Places like convenience stores and pubs are seeing business pick up again. Shin-yeon went to gauge the difference.
Starting this May, South Korea has gone maskless as long as people are outdoors. We're now in the second week since authorities have lifted outdoor mask mandates. Thanks to this, many people, including myself, have taken a step closer to returning to life as it was before the pandemic. This is great news for businesses, particularly convenience stores. One of South Korea's biggest convenience store chains, CU, saw its overall sales rise by 15% for the week after mask mandates were lifted, compared to the week before.
Ever since people were allowed to remove masks when outdoors from this month, we've seen many customers visit our convenience stores. Many looked for cold drinks due to the warmer weather.
The products showing the highest hike in sales were water, carbonated drinks, canned coffee, and sports drinks. Liquor sales jumped by double digits as well. Convenience stores near the Han River in particular have seen a rise in sales, and that's because there's lots of places for people to eat while enjoying the weather and the view. 기분이 어떠세요?
이제 마스크 벗을 수 있어서 좋아요.
여러분은 어떠세요?
좋아요. 와.
We've also seen life begin to return to normal at night. Ever since the government scrapped restrictions on business operation hours, more and more people hit the streets of Gangnam to enjoy Seoul's nightlife. Pubs and bars benefited the most because no curfew means more time to enjoy the nightlife. Cheers!
We barely had any customers when there was a curfew, but now we have so many that we sometimes run out of seats. Sales went up by 30 to 40%.
According to BC Card, sales at bars increased by 47% compared to before the country began relaxing social distancing measures. Corporate credit cards were used by more than 70% of customers, which means there have been more get-togethers among company workers. And businesses are set to see sales continue to rise with the relaxing of even more measures under the new Yoon administration. Shin-yeon, Arirang News.
The government of Finland expressed full support in joining the NATO military alliance. Moscow objects, however, and says that such a move would be a threat. On the ground in Ukraine, there are reports of heavy losses of Russian military vehicles following a pushback from Ukrainian forces. Arirang brings the updates.
Finland on Thursday announced its interest in joining NATO. The Nordic nation's president and prime minister said Finland must apply to join the NATO military alliance without delay, a major policy shift triggered by Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
For us joining NATO would be not against anybody. We would like to maximize our security in way or another while thinking membership in NATO. But it is not a zero-sum game. If Finland increases its security, it's not away from anybody else.
Since Russia annexed Crimea in 2014, Finland has gradually stepped up its cooperation with NATO as a partner, but had until now refrained from joining in order to maintain a friendly relationship with neighboring Russia. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg welcomed Finland's decision, saying that the accession process would be smooth and swift. But Moscow's response was that such a move would be a threat to Russia and warned of possible retaliation. But Finland's foreign minister said in a media briefing on Thursday that the Finnish government is planning to issue a second white paper on Sunday proposing to join NATO. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense on Thursday released satellite imagery of destroyed Russian military vehicles and a pontoon bridge that crosses the Siverskyi Donets River in the east of the country. British newspaper The Times reported on Thursday that over 70 Russian tanks and armored vehicles were estimated to have been destroyed, and around 1,000 Russian soldiers were killed by Ukrainian forces. With the war going on for almost 3 months now, David Beasley, the head of the United Nations World Food Program, told CNN on Thursday that millions of people could die because Ukraine's Black Sea ports are being blocked by Russian officials. Vital shipments of agricultural products remain stuck in Odessa and other neighboring ports. The UN official also said that if Russian President Vladimir Putin has any heart at all for the rest of the world, he has to open the ports up. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
The European Union pledged to provide 500 million euros worth of military support to Ukraine. EU's foreign policy chief made the announcement on Friday while speaking at the G7 foreign ministers meeting on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. At the session, Germany vowed the G7 aims to provide a powerful sign of unity, while the British Foreign Secretary highlighted the importance of pressuring President Vladimir Putin by supplying weapons to Ukraine and increasing sanctions on Moscow. The top diplomat of France emphasized G7 members are strongly united in their support of Ukraine's fight for sovereignty. Supply chain disruptions and the war in Ukraine caused cooking oil prices to shoot up worldwide. Some South Korean wholesale markets are restricting the number of bottles that can be bought. Drivers are seeing diesel exceeding the price of gasoline. Ji-young zooms in on this phenomenon.
On top of being battered by the pandemic, restaurant owners in South Korea are hit hard by the surge in cooking oil prices. Some local wholesale markets are limiting how much cooking oil can be purchased at once.
We use a lot of cooking oil. I'm having a hard time because of high prices, and I don't know what to do.
Over the last few months, cooking oil prices have been shooting up due to the global supply disruption caused by the pandemic and the war in Ukraine. The price of palm oil, vital for most of the world's packaged consumer products, ranging from snacks to cooking oil, has surged. According to the Korea Customs Service, the price of palm oil in March stood at around $1,450 per ton, soaring by more than 40% on year. It's a surge of around 95% compared to the start of the pandemic in March 2020. People around the world are not only seeing higher prices of edible oil, but also for their cars on the heels of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Truck drivers in South Korea are going through hard times, having to spend more money at the pumps.
Before, when I'd fill up, it cost me 250 to 260,000 won, but now it costs me 350,000 won. That's a 100,000 won difference.
Diesel prices in South Korea have exceeded the price of gasoline for the first time in 14 years, reaching almost 2,000 won, or about $1.50 per liter.
Diesel and gasoline prices are soaring in South Korea as they are interlocked with the international market.
Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho said on Friday that the government will soon come up with ways to ease the burden on truck drivers for their diesel expenses. Ji-young, Arirang News.
aespa is included in the list of Time magazine's Next Generation Leaders. The K-pop band consists of 4 human members and their digital avatars that exist in a metaverse. They were described by Time as an experiment that may be the inevitable next step for the music industry, and that the band is a fresh way to bridge the virtual and the real. aespa debuted in November 2020 and rose to fame following the release of the singles Black Mamba, Next Level, and Savage. The group also performed at the world-famous Coachella Festival this year. Since 2014, Time magazine has been annually introducing trailblazers in various fields. BTS, Blackpink, and many other K-pop stars continue to sweep global charts and garner greater international recognition. This Korean wave didn't happen overnight, though. Kim Bo-kyung takes a look back at the evolution of K-pop.
Experts usually say that K-pop genealogy can be traced back to the mid-1990s. And although a line cannot be clearly drawn, the representative groups for each generation changed every 5 to 10 years. The mid to late 1990s saw the arrival of K-pop's first generation of stars. SM Entertainment's H.O.T. and SES, along with DSP Media's Finkel and Jux paved the way for artists to come up with Korea's own dance and hip-hop music.
We could say this was a so-called K-pop test period without a proper management system or agencies. The reigning aesthetic during this generation was dubbed African-American style hip-hop music, on top of which other experimental music could be added.
The mid-2000s to the early 2010s could be considered the time when numerous pioneering acts helped shape today's global K-pop industry. Among them were TVXQ, Super Junior, Girls' Generation, SHINee, 21, Wonder Girls, and so on. Addictive, captivating melodies and choreography perfectly in sync, all of them fully supported by big entertainment production agencies.
Since the second generation, they now found the very possibility of their music becoming globally successful. So because of the Hallyu history, because of the success of the other Hallyu products such as Korean TV series or Korean films, so the second generation idol and their entertainment agency thought more seriously that they could be the international star. But
still, however, the popularity of these groups remained within Asian borders. BTS, Blackpink, and TWICE finally sprang on the scene and brought worldwide attention to the K-pop industry and pushed K-pop beyond Asian countries. The messages shared in their songs started to change, telling their fans how important it is to love themselves and encouraging listeners to be courageous. In the early 2020s, new idol groups such as ITZY, IVE, G-Idol, and aespa were unveiled. Thanks to BTS, fourth-generation idols now consider themselves as global artists with international audience in mind with everything they do. Now with solid fandom and a concrete music base, idols are expanding musical diversity even more. X are also exploring totally new concepts like aespa, whose group identity is connected to avatars in the digital space so that each member can appear virtually in music videos and performances.
From the first generation to the fourth, with the passage of time, the representative idol groups that swept the charts and enjoyed popularity have changed. Yet K-pop idols, a major part of an overhaul in Korea's arts and entertainment sector, have consistently expanded their influence from the beginning. Now that K-pop is receiving worldwide attention from global fans, it won't come as a surprise to see more global superstars like BTS continuing that success. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
The unseasonable heat we've had for the past few days will finally ease off. This weekend is forecast to be sunny with temperatures dropping to near the seasonal norms. Highs across the capital area will see daytime temperatures hovering near 21 to 22 degrees Celsius, but wide temperature gaps are expected, so please dress accordingly. While temperatures will be breezy, the sun's UV radiation will be intense overall. The UV ray index will be in the high to very high range for tomorrow, and its forecast remains strong until this Sunday. So do consider a hat or sunscreen if you're out for any length of time or in the middle part of the day. The peak hours for strong UV rays are in between 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Blazing sunshine will dominate for the morning hours. Seoul and Gyeongju will start up at 11 degrees. As for the daily highs, Seoul and Chuncheon will get up to 21 degrees, Gwangju 22, and Daegu will be topping out at 24 degrees. The weather pattern for next week will contain clear skies with big contrast in daily temperatures. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That's all from us. As always, thank you for watching.